Hey y'all, it's Nick from 3-2 Pitch, and welcome back to the 3-2 Pitch, our podcast where we go around, and right now we are currently discussing every division in baseball. Drew, quickly, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Nicholas. Been busy. I'm a teacher, so it's actually more work than it is when we actually have to go to work because we have parents and students emailing us, calling us. But overall, doing pretty good. I enjoyed the NFL draft last night. It was nice to. I know you're not a huge football fan, but it was great to, see some sports on TV. It felt like something. And I'm still missing baseball. And I just, again, every week that goes by, I get a little more worried, especially when we don't hear really anything from the league at this point. I know they're waiting for, the experts to weigh in, but it's getting to be, I'm getting more and more pessimistic by the week.
Yeah, so that's just a big thing. Hoping baseball comes back, but I like you, don't see baseball coming back this season. Keep telling all my friends. But one thing that MLB has come out and announced this last week was the punishment for the Red Sox and their sign stealing scandal. And my question, we introduce every podcast with the question is, what do you think about the Astros Red Sox punishment? The Astros, of course, lost first and second round draft picks in this year and next year, $5 million. AJ Hinch was banned. Their GM was banned. And then the Red Sox, JT Watkins, their replay manager, is suspended throughout the season, can't hold the job. The Red Sox lost their 2020 second round pick, and Cora has been suspended throughout the season for previous scandals. What do you think about that?
So, yeah, we didn't really get a chance to talk too much about the scandal. And actually, luckily for the Astros, they were probably the happiest that this whole pandemic kind of happened because it kind of overshadowed what the beginning of the season would have looked like as far as, the backlash that they would have received going into ballparks. And, I know you're wearing an A's hat today, and the A's fans were ready to really, really pile in on the Astros and boo them. And there was talk about teams, throwing at players and things like that. Unfortunately, I don't know if it's going to be as, strict as it would have been if the season, progressed at normally. I think the Red Sox are probably going to get off a lot easier also than, people think. This may even go overshadowed. Personally, I don't feel like it was enough as far as the punishment. And I definitely don't think that, the World Series should be taken away because I just don't believe in that. But I'm a big believer in probation. And one of the things that they do in college basketball and in other college sports is that they actually put teams on probation, meaning that they can't make the playoffs. And they can't compete again for a world championship, meaning even if they did win the division and they could play the regular season and still make their, as much money as they can for their organization. But once it comes down to the postseason, they're ineligible for the postseason. And they're basically an invisible, if they were in first place, they would be an invisible first place winner. And I know that sounds a little bit tainted, but the second place team in that division, which we're going to talk about today, actually would be the division winner and so on and so forth. So their record wouldn't count. And I think that would be a way. Another thing that I think that they could have done, was really punish the players more. And I know that Rob Manfred gave immunity to some players for speaking out, but again, I didn't think it was enough. It's going to get overshadowed to a certain point, and I do think that when the season starts up again, if it does start up again, and I'm not saying it's not, it could. And funny enough, the NHL actually thought about using my rationale from a few weeks ago, which was having regional stadiums. They were talking about doing that to start their season. So it's very important that I think the league looks very closely at what happened here and that it doesn't get overshadowed.
Yeah, so I agree with that. I don't think the punishment was enough. Card in the top right corner, right above me, where I actually talked about the Astros sign stealing and their punishment. Was it enough? Was it not enough? I think your idea with the suspension, where the team cannot play in the 2020 postseason is actually a very good idea. I kind of disagree with him giving immunity to players. I think that was a bad idea because let's be honest here, the players won't be inclined because they still have their rings. We saw Josh Reddick. I talked about this in the video. He flexed his ring. How does it feel like wearing a fake ring or whatever? And he just posted still got one. So I mean, it still incentivizes the players hey, we're not going to be punished for it. So if I don't really care, I'm just going to go out and cheat. I'll get a World Series ring. So that's my big issue with it. The 2019 Nationals, you guys are next on the punishment. Seen in the last couple of years, Nationals, expect your punishment coming up. But probably not going to happen. Nothing reported with them. Of course, took a few years. But now, as you see, you will probably know by all this podcasts you've watched, I'm a Mets fan. And this week we're covering the AL West. That's why I'm wearing my A's stuff. My brother's Little League jersey right here. So the AL West, they have, of course, the Astros, the Houston Trash Can Bangers out here. It's a very interesting division. Two teams went out big this offseason, and we all, of course, have that one underdog the last couple of years in the A's. What do you think about fifth place in this division?
So this division is really interesting. It's definitely not the strongest division in baseball for sure. It's top heavy. I do believe that, and I think there might be a bit of a surprise. For a little preview here, or a little hint that there might be a team that finally lives up to some of their potential. And I think you may know who I'm talking about. But I'm going to start with my fifth place team, and that is the Seattle Mariners. The Seattle Mariners are a team that is in, to me, complete rebuild mode. They still have a few contracts that they're still kind of dealing with, but for the most part, when you look at their pitching staff, and when you look at the bullpen, and when you look at the players that they've lost over the last few years, when you talk about Robinson Cano and Justin Smoke and a number of the different guys that they've had, it's just not the same team. And I think you would probably agree with me. They're just a completely different team. They've always been sort of an underachieving team anyway. And now, with their headliner Marco Gonzalez, Kikuchi is someone that may be able to show some potential this year. I do like Taijuan Walker. I've seen him pitch with Arizona, and he's sort of someone that I think has a future. Kendall Graveman's an interesting one as their fifth starter. He was a high prospect with the Oakland A's years ago and never really lived up to the billing, but is someone that I think you never know with a second chance. And then they have a few guys on their roster like Kyle Seager, and he's really towards the end of his career. He's on the downside. I like D. Gordon. I like Haniger. I like some of the talent they have, but in this division, as we're going to talk about, with it being a top-heavy division, they really don't have a chance, I don't think, to do much. I guess all they can really hope for at this point would be to have their young pitching sort of, start to show some potential. But other than that, this is the usual Seattle Mariners. They're going to they may get off to a good start like they did last year, but I mean a real early good start, and then back to more of a 10 to 15 games under 500 kind of team.
First off, I'm still in disbelief how you guys just finessed the Mets terribly in that Robinson Cano trade. I mean, you gave up the best closer in the league, and now he's changed his name to Ed Luz Diaz. I mean, that was an amazing trade for you guys. You dumped more than half of Cano's contract. You dumped Diaz. You guys did take on Swarzak and Bruce, but just, again, not on your team currently, so that's a great trade. You guys added Justin Dunn, Gerson Bautista, and Jared Kalenic. Oh, boy, that is you guys have a very bright future ahead of you guys, along with getting Justice Sheffield in the James Paxton trade, getting Crawford, I believe, J.P. Crawford, from the Phillies in the Segura trade. You guys have a ton of young pieces coming up for you guys. You have right fielder. I'm forgetting his name. He's young. He's in MLB The Show. I had him. I was acquiring him. not off the top of my head, but you have Mitch Haniger, unless he ruptures his testicle, of course. He's a solid player. Mallex Smith, he's a nice, quick, speedy guy. D. Gordon, you guys have lots of speed up in Seattle. But again, I don't see you guys doing anything. Keep the rebuild. Try to trade Seager if you can. Move his contract. D. Gordon, too, if there's anything for him. Haniger, I think it was not smart of just hanging on to him. I think you guys should have traded him last season. Of course, with the injuries that he's had, also back issues and during rehab and everything. I think it's definitely clear that we're going to see Haniger on his way out this season if it ever comes around. So overall, 5th place, Seattle Mariners. I don't think they're going to go anywhere. Not a great team. 4th place, this is where we're going to start getting tight, but I think there's a clear and obvious runner.
Yeah, this is where we might disagree. I have Texas here. This is where I have Texas, and again, you may disagree with me, or you might agree with me. I'm not sure. We haven't had a conversation. We don't. For those of you that tune into the show, we don't do pre-show conversations about our picks. We talk about other things, but we don't talk about our picks because we want to make sure that it's natural. This is a team that, yes, while they're moving into a new stadium, that may not matter this year because I seriously doubt that they're going to play a game in that stadium unless it becomes one of the regional locations, which was my idea. But this is a team that, they do have a frontline starter now in Corey Kluber, so that's a good thing. They've got a pretty decent second starter in Mike Minor. Lance Lynn, Kyle Gibson, Jordan Lyles, for me, are just not really, I don't know if they're going to be able to compete with the offense in this division. The Rangers have some young talent. They really do. It starts with Joey Gallo. He's the man. Okay. This guy can just rip the ball. So, if he can cut down on his strikeouts a little bit, I think he might be pretty good. You can maybe go more in depth on the stats on Gallo, but I love Gallo. I'm also a big fan of Odor. I've always loved his attitude and sort of his flair. Todd Frazier is Todd Frazier. He's an older player now. He's one of those guys that he's gonna sort of mentor the young players. Shin-Soo Choo had a great year last year, had a bounce back year, but again, it's not a team to me that I see, like they did a few years ago, making sort of a surprise playoff push. I don't see enough depth, and I don't see enough pitching. When I look at their bullpen, I don't see the star power that you would need, with Montero and Leclerc. I don't know about Robinson Chirinos as a catcher. Elvis Andrus is towards, again, the downside of his career. They have some young players in Danny Santana and Willie Calhoun and Nick Solak, but is it going to be enough in this division? The answer is no. But they are better than Seattle, 4th place team.
How could you put them at 4th place? 2 players, Greg Bird, Todd Frazier. That obviously makes them a 1st place team, according to Yankees fans and anyone who thinks that Todd Frazier is actually good, because boy, oh boy, do those two suck. As you saw, card in the top right corner, I'll link one of them, probably another one now. I made really 2 joke videos talking about Todd Frazier and Greg Bird signing with the Rangers. It's kind of funny, the memes throughout baseball. They're 2 of the bigger players that are just have memes across them. But Texas, I think, is in a very interesting position because my motto is pitching wins games. Because if you don't have pitching, you could have the greatest lineup in the world, but if you have terrible pitchers, you're going to give up just as many runs as you score. His pitching shuts it down. Lance Lynn had like a 3 ERA last year. That is insanely good. I think adding a player like Jordan Lyles and Kyle Gibson, both rough years, but the pitching coach last year for the Rangers is able to help Mike Minor and Lance Lynn. I think they're going to help find Gibson and Lyles' stuff along with Kluber. I think he's going to have a strong bounce back year. I think you guys definitely have a top rotation in baseball. Super underrated in my opinion. And the bullpen, the main one I want to mention is Joely Rodriguez. Dude was a stud in Japan last year. Absolute steal for you guys. when I was talking about that move, I'm like, how am I not making this a separate video? Because he is seriously going to be great for you. I know previously in MLB, he was not very strong, but I think he's going to be solid coming back from Japan. He had like a 1.7 ERA. It's crazy. Chirinos, I think he's definitely might still have something. Of course, we saw him hit homers in back-to-back days in the World Series in Washington. Guzman and Greg Bird at first base, Guzman, maybe he shows up potential. The big issue I had with you guys this offseason is trading Nomar Mazara. I think that's the one place you went wrong because this lineup needs some offense. Yeah, you have a little tight. You're a little tight in your outfield. But I think Mazara this year for the White Sox, we're going to talk about them next week, is going to go absolutely off. Like you said, Odor, Frazier, Andres, I mean, they're getting all older. I don't know how well Odor will be able to play. Joey Gallo is the centerpiece of this team. Dude will hit like 50 home runs for you if he's healthy for an entire year. Willie Calhoun, Danny Santana, 2 players I'm watching in fantasy. So overall, I'm actually going to put the Rangers in a tie for third place. I think is probably the smartest thing to do because I really see the Angels and Rangers really close together. But I think the Rangers probably have a slightly worse team than the Angels. We'll talk about the Angels next and why I think that.
I would tend to agree that they're going to be close, but I actually do have the Angels on a little bit of a higher tier. So I'll go ahead and get to my third place team, which is the Angels. However, I actually think that this team may be able to compete for a wild card spot, and I haven't, believe me, I haven't thought that in a long time. I am not a huge I've never been a fan of this team. Obviously, they broke my heart in 2002, and since then I've hated them. And I hate them more than the Dodgers because, as in 2002, if for those of you young fans that don't remember because you were born, the San Francisco Giants had a 3-2 lead in the World Series against the Anaheim Angels at the time. They weren't the LA Angels of Anaheim yet. That was when Barry Bonds was, fully on steroids. He was in the peak of steroid usage. And we had Jeff Kent and Rich Aurelia and Reggie Sanders, and David Bell, and Jason Schmidt, and Levon Hernandez, Kirk Reeder, and Russ Ortiz. It was a really great team, a lot of power, good bench. Kenny Lofton was the leadoff hitter. They acquired him at the offseason trade deadline. And the Giants had it. The Giants were up 5-0 in Game 6 of the World Series in Anaheim, with Anaheim having home field. So they had a Game 7 if it would be extended. It was a 2-3-2 format, which it still is. And it was 5-0. And the Giants, it was the 7th inning. and as Giants fans, we were starting to count down the outs, and there was a guy named Scott Spiezio for the Angels. And he had an epic at bat against one of the Giants' best relievers of the time. His name was Felix Rodriguez. And Rodriguez threw him fastball after fastball after fastball after fastball, about 7 or 8 pitches, if I remember right. And Spiezio kept fouling him back. And then all he had to do was throw a breaking ball. All he had to do was throw a slider in the dirt. This guy was toast. He throws another fastball down and in, and Spiezio golfs it down the right field line, high, not deep, but high. And you know how the Angels, they have that short porch on both sides. It gets to the wall, and Reggie Sanders, who was towards the end of his career at the time, was playing right field. He bumps into the wall, and his body gets off balance, and his glove almost falls off, and the ball goes into the second row for a 3-run homer to make it 5-3. After that, the Giants never recovered from that. Darren Erstad in the 8th leads off the 8th with a home run to make it 5-4. And then after 2 hits, Troy Glaus hits a long double to left center that scores 2. They go up 6-5. They win the game, and then they win Game 7 4-1. And the Giants, never recovered from that after the Bonds era. So why do I tell that story? Because I hate the Angels. That's the reason why I tell that story. But having said all of that, I do think that they are going to have a better year this year. And I think Anthony Rendon is a big part of that. I also think Shohei Ohtani having his second season in the big leagues, with that comfort level, having Heaney and Tehran in the bullpen. I'm sorry, in the rotation with Dylan Bundy, and having Cam Bedrosian and Robles in the bullpen to close games out with an old Pujols, but still having Simmons, Trout, Upton, in the lineup with Castro as your catcher. This is a team that still has enough talent to me. They still have enough talent to compete. Are they going to win the division? H to the no. But can they compete for one of the wild card spots? Possibly. So I see them as just a slight tier above Texas.
Yeah, so I have them actually closer to Texas because the Angels had one thing to do this offseason, and they failed. It was to sign Garrett Cole, Bumgarner. I think Keuchel would even be solid. I mean, they had like one job, and that was to sign a starting pitcher, and they whiffed. They signed Tehran and acquired Bundy. So Tehran, I think, he's actually a really good sign. I think signing him is really great. I think I predicted him correctly on the top 50 free agents for MLB trade rumors before the offseason started. But Dylan Bundy, I think getting him out of Baltimore is going to be solid for him. I think he was solid back when he just came up and the Orioles were just pushing into the playoffs way back when. It feels like so long ago now. But I think Bundy is definitely a solid pitcher that could perhaps turn it around with LA. I think Ohtani coming back from Tommy John, he's going to be a huge boost. But I just can't trust Heaney, Canning, and Drees maybe. But I just don't have a ton of trust in the rotation as I would. A big reason for that is your new pitching coach, Mickey Callaway. He actually sucked as a manager, so hopefully he forgets how to do something as a pitching coach because, I hate Callaway. Oh, boy, but you guys do have the new manager in Joe Madden, so maybe that'll do something. But, I mean, your bullpen type, Buttrey, Hansel, Robles, I don't think you have a solid bullpen. I think it's just a bunch of crap laying around in nice words. I think your offense is where your team shines, though. Jason Castro, he was a solid pickup, being an everyday catcher for you guys. I think he's great. Albert Pujols, he's getting older and older and older. You'd be lucky if you can get 20 home runs. I'm really rooting for the man. I think he can get to that 700 home run mark, I believe it is. Or 700, right?
700.
Yeah, 700. Okay. I'm not going crazy. That's high number. You don't see that often.
He's already hit his 600 home run.
Yeah. That's right. That was a couple years ago. So Tommy La Stella, I think he had a solid year last year. He came out of nowhere. David Fletcher, very underrated. And I think Anthony Rendon ties his entire offense together. You guys definitely have a top lineup. Mainly because you have the greatest player in baseball right now, paired with one of the second best third baseman. I'd even put him over Bregman, right behind Arenado, I think, and Rendon. I think he's gonna be a solid player. Simmons, can he, bring the bat back? He's kind of streaky. He's good here and then bad there. His fielding, of course. Can Upton bounce back? I think this lineup is very solid. Just can the pitching tie the entire thing together? If they can, I think they can push for a wild card. But I think if their pitching's just streaky, I don't think they're doing. I think that's why I have them tied with third place, but a slight edge because their lineup, I think, can carry. And their pitching staff definitely has some potential.
All right, let's move on to second place. And this is where we get to have a little fun because we get to, I think both of us hopefully will be on the same page here, but this is where we get to sort of give sort of a middle finger back to the Astros. This will be a second place team this year. And you may disagree, but this will be a second place team this year, and they have a lot of talent still. But as you know, and as most baseball people know, pitching is the story. And you can go back and look at so many reasons why the Nationals won the World Series last year, and the biggest reason was their starting rotation. And to me, it wasn't even close. It was the fact that they had those pillars in their starting rotation, especially Strasburg, who stepped up, but not just Strasburg, but what Scherzer was able to do, and then what even Anibal Sanchez was able to do. Having that depth in their rotation, it made a huge difference. And then Corbin being able to come out and pitch not only in a starting role, but also out of the bullpen, made a big difference and then bridge the gap between getting to Daniel Hudson and Sean Doolittle. So it really did make a difference. I don't think Houston has the pitching depth this year. I just don't see it. I always talk about it every week. I'm a big believer in how players age. And yes, Verlander has aged gracefully, but eventually he's going to hit somewhat of an age wall. Even Tom Brady, as great as he is, he's hit a wall of age, and Verlander's really getting up there. Greinke, he showed last year that, especially in Game 7, that he can step up still, but eventually they get to him. He's got a shelf life. He's not the old Greinke that could go 8-9 innings and shut you. So Lance McCullers is definitely going to be a huge part of this pitching staff. I remember, again, watching him pitch in a Game 7, a few years ago against the Dodgers, and whether they were cheating or not, he had nothing to do with that, as a pitcher. So wonderful young, pitcher with some big postseason experience. Now as we look at their lineup, obviously they still have, they still have a dynamite lineup. They still have, and I love Maldonado. I'm a fan of Maldonado. Gurriel, Altuve, Bregman, Correa, Brantley, Springer, Reddick. I mean, the whole, and Yordan Alvarez too. So you're talking about a wonderful lineup, but we're going to talk about a team in a moment that has a better overall depth, especially when it comes to pitching and young pitching. And that is going to be too much for them to overcome. This team will get a wild card spot, though. They will. They're going to get to the postseason. They're too good not to. They're probably going to win about 95 games. But I think our next team's going to win 100. So that's why I have the Astros in second. And it doesn't mean that they can't win the World Series, especially if it's a shortened season. And if the elements are not a part of the deal, which because I'm thinking if baseball does come back, it's again going to be regional, and it'll be because of the hot summer, you might have some of those dome stadiums open up, and even if they are able to play in their own stadium, they have the retractable roof in Houston, so they definitely got a great chance to win a lot of games. But I just think that our first place team in this division is really good. And, that's why I think the Astros are in second.
Yeah, so I said before we started briefly that this may be the division we agree most in, and it's exactly what we're doing. I'm putting the Astros at second place too. And, I mean, the main reason is Garrett Cole. I mean, losing Garrett Cole hurts a ton. Yeah, best pitcher in baseball, why didn't he win the Cy Young last year? Justin Verlander, like a fine wine, is aging greatly with age. Greinke, two old players in their rotation. McCullers coming back from Tommy John. How will he play out? That's a big thing. But they do have the young Yakirti, who showed really well in the playoffs, the World Series in Washington. The MLB The Show is really high on him. Today, actually, the day we're recording this Friday, they came out with a 92 Future Stars player of him. So he's definitely a player to look out for. Their bullpen, again, really strong, in my opinion. One of the top bullpens: Osuna, Presley, Joe Smith, Josh James, Chris Stefanski, Peacock. I mean, you also lost Wade Miley, but again, towards the latter half of the season, he just imploded. And then you get to their lineup, which is, deadly. But again, I was really high on Yuli Gurriel. I was going to draft him this year in fantasy until the cheating came out. I planned super far ahead. I'm big into fantasy at the moment. And I was like, Gurriel, yes, I'm drafting him. Then the cheating stuff came out. I was actually rooting for the Astros against the Nationals, but now I rooted for the Nationals practically the entire way through the playoffs, which is kind of sad for me to say. But basically, the Yuli Gurriel, I was high on him, but, of course, cheated. So we don't know how well he's going to play. He kind of blossomed right when they started the cheating and everything. Altuve, I think he's the only proven player to, come out of this. Of course, he hit that home run, rip his jersey off or not. Oh, I have a buzzer, don't rip my jersey off. Don't know how well he's doing. Aledmus Diaz, can he prove something? Correa, Bregman, those are two young players. I think those players will have solid seasons. Altuve, again, getting older, so without the cheating, maybe he declines a little bit. You've seen it the last couple years with him. Michael Brantley, solid in Cleveland, better year last year. He's going to be solid. Jordan Alvarez, I don't know how much of the cheating, with the buzzers, if they did use buzzers last year, Jordan had any, but I think Jordan definitely has a strong chance to be an amazing DH. Springer, of course, free agent year this coming up. How is he going to do? Kyle Tucker, is he going to be a top prospect like they hope? So, I mean, the Astros definitely have pieces. It's just, can they get ahead of this entire cheating thing? Yes, this whole situation with COVID-19 has helped them a lot. But I think once we talk about baseball and baseball's happening, I think the fans, yes, it's still in the back of our minds right now. We're like, oh, go to the store, hoard all the toilet paper possible. But in the back of our heads, there's still that thing saying, hey, the Astros cheated. Let's go punish them. So I think there's definitely, once baseball comes around, you're definitely going to see that. If we have no fans, then that's even better for them. But I think, in general, the Astros organization isn't going to be able to recover. That's the main reason I have them in second place, along with the loss of Garrett Cole.
And you make great points, and Garrett Cole is probably the biggest sort of factor here. But I do want to sort of tell you guys why I didn't bring up the cheating scandal when I'm talking about him, is because I think that it really, unfortunately for the league, because I think it needed to be handled. I just think that this COVID-19 situation is sort of letting them off the hook in a way. If they came back and the baseball world was sort of focused on this scandal, then yes, the pressure really would have mounted. I don't see the pressure being a factor in a shortened season. If there's a season that starts in June and goes through November, I don't see that being a factor. I just don't, because baseball is baseball, and especially if you have no fans in the stands, which is definitely going to be the case. You are not going to see fans in the stands. There's really not going to be anything that's getting in their way of doing what they were doing before the cheating scandal. These guys are talented players. Okay, I'm not the kind of person. I still believe that McGuire and Bonds and Canseco, they were still great players before steroids. Okay, you watch Barry Bonds, his first 7 years in the league, 1986 to 1993, he was an MVP. He was a three or four-time MVP. In 1993, he had his best season, arguably 46 homers, 125 RBIs, and hit 336. That was pre-steroids. Okay, in a league that had a dead ball. That was the dead ball era. So these players have always been talented. So number one, I think people need to understand that, because I think people like to get on their high horse and think that the scandal had everything to do with them winning the World Series. And it's a long season, okay? But I still think, even with them being let off the hook, I think our next team is that much better. And that's my reasoning behind it.
Yeah, you bring up actually a great point, being they're good. I mean, major leaguers, they have to get to the MLB somehow, and they sure did not cheat in the minor leagues, that's for sure. So, I mean, just to get there, they're already great. So, like I said, Altuve did it before the cheating thing. Gurriel is actually the big question mark I have on this team. But, of course, coming up, Correa's super talented, Bregman's super talented, Springer's talented. So, I mean, I think this team definitely has potential. But, I just think that, like you say, the A's, the next team we're talking about, the final team in first place, has a ton more potential. Why do you got him?
I got two words for you: Jesus Luzardo. This guy is going to be great. It's not going to take long. It's not going to take long for him to become a stud ace, and he has all the potential in the world as a power left-handed guy to absolutely dominate. And when I say dominate, I mean dominate. And right now they have Jesus Luzardo slotted in the 4 spot. Okay, that's all you need to know about this team. The depth, the pitching depth that this team has accumulated over the last 5 years is very similar to what powerhouse pitching teams like the Giants in the past have done. Where not only do you have that rotation, but you've got a bullpen that can really, shorten a game. When you talk about Petit, when you talk about Soria, who they brought in, when you talk about Lou Trevino, and then Liam Hendriks closing out games. This team, and Diekman, they have what it takes. And then that's not even talking about the rest of their rotation. Minaya, Montaz, Fires, and AJ Puck, who, again, is he going to be at the level of Luzardo? Probably not. But, man, does he have potential. So you're looking at a Puck. You're looking at a Luzardo, Puck, Minaya threesome. You're talking about better than Maddox, Glavine, and Smoltz. Okay, better than Lincecum, Bumgarner, and Kane. These guys have tremendous potential, and they're so young. Okay, so young. So this is a team that, from top to bottom, they have depth. When you look at their lineup, it just they are just your prototypical sort of millennial type of lineup. When you talk about on base percentage, when you talk about Olsen and Chapman and Simeon, Laureano, Canna. I'm a huge fan of Piscotty. He's such a wonderful guy. He's been through so much, and he brings them a lot of veteran sort of leadership, and he's not even that old. And then Chris Davis, who, again, hit or miss, okay? He's not, but again, he's your DH, okay? So this team is going to score 4 to 5 runs a night. They just are. There's you look at that lineup, there's no way around it. I mean, I'd be surprised if they score less than 4 runs a game. And then with that pitching staff and the bullpen and the experience that they've accumulated being in the last 2 wild card games, this is the year that they say, screw it. We're not taking a chance on a 1-game playoff anymore. We're winning this division. And, they're there. They've arrived. Sometimes it takes teams a couple years. Okay. It took the Braves a few years. The Braves have arrived. The A's are there. They are there. They're not even in the middle of their prime yet, but they have arrived. So they're at the beginning of the ascent to the top of the American League. And it's a perfect segue for them, especially with the Astros losing Garrett Cole and with everything that's happened as far as the scandal goes. This is a team that, again, in an abbreviated season, but I'm just going to scale it, that they win 100 games easy. And I think that they win a first-round series and get to the ALCS. I really believe that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jesus Luzardo, dominant last season when he came up. I think AJ Puck, when he comes around, he's definitely proven high. Previously in MLB The Show, 18, I believe it was, he was an absolute glitch code. He would always turn out amazing. I think Puck, Luzardo, Minaya, Mike Fiers, he's a solid veteran to tie that thing together. Frankie Montas, can he get off the drugs? He's been suspended twice, I believe, the last couple of years for PEDs. Can Liam Hendriks prove a second strong year after what we saw with Blake Treinen drop off? Hoping he can. But, I mean, their bullpen is loaded. Moving Megden Bassett down there. I mean, this team is just loaded. You have the young Sean Murphy. You have Matt Olson, who's healthy, can hit like 50-something home runs, walks a lot. I mean, this lineup is so good. You have Barreto at second base, shortstop Semien. That's actually one of my bigger question marks in this team is, okay, Semien came out of nowhere last year. Can he put up top 5, in the MVP race numbers again?
Well, let me stop you there for a second. He didn't come out of nowhere. Yeah. This guy, he's been building up his resume for a number of years, and it finally came together for him. But Marcus Semien, that guy has always been a stud. He just had to get out of his own head.
Yeah, he broke out in like the big way that we've been waiting for. Semien has been flying a little, kind of like Xander Bogaerts, a little bit under the radar, previously, but of course last year burst onto the scene top 5. I think definitely maybe a step back. I don't think he can put up exactly, close to 40 home runs. I don't think those exact numbers are going to come out of him. Mark Canna, he surprised me last year. Definitely a solid player. Ramone Laureano, this dude's a stud. Have you seen his arm? He's throwing people out from like 400 feet away on the fly. I mean, boy, oh boy, he had flashbacks to Yoenis Cespedes when he gunned that guy out at home from left field. mean, man,
And he
is
can
he
hit too.
great.
This guy
Yeah,
can
he
hit.
can hit. He has a ton of potential. And like you said, Piscotty, Robbie Grossman, Chris Davis, can he get back to his streak of hitting 247 again with a bunch of homers? He had a terrible year last year. But if you get a bounce back, Chris Davis, I mean, this team is so good. The young talent, I mean, you have Tony Kemp out there still, Chad Pinder, a utility man. I mean, this team is loaded everywhere you look. They have amazing depth. Definitely a year to finally break out. This team is going to be fun to watch this season. Definitely a fun team, and being from the Bay Area, that's good. Good that we'll have at least another baseball team competing in further in the playoffs.
Because it's not going to be the Giants.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. Thank y'all so much for watching the 3-2 pitch on the AL West. Hope y'all enjoyed. Let us know what you think in the comment section below. I finally remembered the Mariners right fielder I was talking about, Julio Rodriguez. Don't know why that name just randomly came to me. But this is interesting. The Astros. We saw how frustrated George Springer was in spring training when he didn't know what things were coming. I mean, we saw that one clip of him in the club in the dugout after he struck out against the Mets, I believe it was. So I mean, the frustration is definitely going to kick in throughout different teams. The A's, of course, both of us, we agree. The division, we may agree with every team in their places completely. Drew, do you have a message from to send them off with?
Thank you guys for joining us, for continuing to support the show and the podcast. And again, it's a tough time. It's a tough time for baseball fans, and it's really starting to get old. So hopefully, as we get towards the end of April here, and we in the next few weeks, we're going to finish up our predictions. We get some news from Major League Baseball. We want to be able to hear something. There are rumblings. It doesn't. The pessimism comes in the fact that it doesn't seem like the initial idea really, took any sort of, stringent hold on anything. It didn't seem like anyone took that seriously, the whole idea of Arizona and Florida. And I actually totally agree that it was a terrible idea. I'm hoping that we get a little bit more of an answer of what may come here in the future. Again, the league, the players, they're going to need some time to get ready. You don't want to put out a terrible product out there. And the other thing that you don't want to do is start the season and then have to stop again. That would be devastating at this point. It would be better just to literally get ready for next season. So I'm hopeful that in the next couple of weeks, we can do a show together where we talk about the reopening of the season. Until then, thank you guys for watching, and hopefully you're enjoying the MLB The Show, because that's all we got right now.
Yep. Thank y'all so much for watching. I will see you next week. Thank y'all so much for watching. Check out my Twitter at the3_2pitch, and check out my Twitch at Nick_crafts. I'm live streaming Thursday through Monday. Once summer comes around, I'll be live streaming every day. YouTube recommends you watch the video in top left corner. Click in top right corner for most recent upload. Click in the middle to subscribe, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Peace.